Hello, everyone. I'm Patricia Bottero Saint-Jean, founder of Open for Business and business research strategist. And I help burned out employees transition from being an employee to becoming an entrepreneur by studying the right business for them. And that could be a turnkey business like a franchise, it could be an independent business from their brilliant idea. And it could also be a business that they are looking to acquire, a business that's existing and for sale. And we do this with the online courses, we do this with our coaching sessions, but also by interviewing subject matter experts like Eric Owens, who is here with us today. And Eric is the founder of appbusinessbrokers.com. And appbusinessbrokers.com is an online, is a brokerage company that specializes in brokering the transactions, the sale and the acquisition of online businesses, e-commerce, and mobile apps. Is that correct, Eric?
That's right.
Great. Well, welcome and thank you very much for being here with us today and sharing your wisdom about buying or selling or even starting a business online so you can sell it well in the future. So, Eric, you've been an internet entrepreneur since what, 1998?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct?
97, 98. Yeah.
And your expertise is really all aspects of brokering the sale of online businesses and mobile app. And you've also been brokering the sale of internet businesses for the past 15 years and the mobile app for 8 years. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's right.
And I saw that you have brokered business for very famous people like Matt Clark, Ezra Firestone, and Mike Koenigs, and other multiple top leaders in the internet business world. So 15 years ago, 2005, that's really when the online business began to really take off. Is that correct? Is that about around
Y-
that time or
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it seems like there more and more businesses were popping up for sure.
honestly, I've never heard of, I mean, this, when I met you, I didn't realize that anyone specialized in brokering online businesses, especially. I knew about, brokerage firms that specialize in selling and buying restaurants or other types of businesses. But, your company must be one of the most established brokerage firms that specialize in online businesses out there, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. There's been a few other people who've been around quite a while. But yeah, definitely one of the most established, been around it a long time. So
So, for someone who has a business, an online business, is there an advantage to using someone like you who specializes in online business versus using a brokerage firms that they may sell restaurants, brick and mortar businesses, they may sell also online businesses, they may sell mobile businesses or service oriented business when they have like a wider reach of potential customers than your firm, or what would be the advantage of working with you specifically for online?
yeah, I think really the seems like a lot of internet entrepreneurs when they go to sell now, they definitely look for brokers who specialize in online businesses. I think partly it's just a matter of like we have some expertise in packaging up the businesses in a way that it appeals most to buyers and that they
Okay.
how they like to see the information. And then also too, we can work with sellers where sometimes sellers will come to us and they may have a few things going on with their business where if they just fixed a few simple things with it, then they could increase the value. Uh,
Okay.
where we can work with them and advise them on that versus offline business brokers, some of them are awesome at what they do, just they usually specialize in the offline aspects of it. They do typically have like we get some people that come to us like one of my friends, a friend of a friend, wanted to sell like a spa and
Mhm.
wanted to see if I could work with them. And I was like, no, I referred them out to an offline business broker just because they have way more local buyers than we would.
Right.
So,
Right.
if someone wanted to sell a business where I'm at in Nashua, New Hampshire, I would say, go use a local business broker just because they'll have more buyers. Versus us, we have more access to online business buyers who
Mhm.
some of them are people who buy multiple online businesses, or even if they're newer to buying businesses, they've gone through our listings before and have some experience with that. So,
Mhm. So, and you still, regardless, you still advertise the businesses that are for sale on networks, BizBuy, for
yes.
sale, etc., like that. So they still see a buyer business buyer probably would still see that your businesses that you're listing are available as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes we do find a local buyer for businesses, for
Okay.
online ones, so it's funny, sometimes it works in reverse where we'll
Oh,
we'll match up a seller and buyer who happens to be local to them, so.
oh, I see. Okay. So, do you work with any buyer and seller of online businesses from anywhere in the United States, any state in the United States? Where are you located?
New Hampshire, so
New
near
Hampshire.
Boston,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, we work with people all over the place in the United States, internationally too. I think most of our seller
Oh,
clients have been US based, but we do get some sellers from like UK and Canada and,
huh.
Australia, uh, other places like that. So,
That's right.
one
The
of the
sky
ones
is
we
the
just
limit.
sold was for a seller client who's Vietnamese, and another one that was based in Hong Kong. So,
Oh, wow.
you know,
Okay.
especially with the mobile app stuff, a lot
Right.
of those entrepreneurs tend to be all over the place. But
I was wondering about that. So the mobile apps really it opens a whole world of buyers, not
yeah,
just nationally but internationally.
yep, definitely.
That's an interesting concept because the geography, of course, is no longer an issue.
Yeah, a
So
lot of buyers these days for us do come from the United States, especially for e-commerce and Amazon businesses, things like that, where so a lot of them are US based on the buyer
right.
side. But
So yeah, so for a buyer, really, you open up the world, an international world to a buyer and to a seller. Actually, it's no
yeah,
longer domestic. So I never actually even saw it under that angle. But let's talk about buying a business. The buyer who is considering an online business, from their perspective, what would you say are the main differences about buying an online business versus a more traditional brick and mortar? I know we talked about geography, but is
sure.
there anything else that they need to consider, before they acquire an online business or a mobile app business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some local businesses, they can benefit from things like physical location or a local established customer base, where it
Right.
is geographical in some ways. They do also tend to have more opportunities for bank financing compared to online businesses. We can talk about the online business funding in some more detail, but local
Oh, okay.
businesses do have some advantages that way, where if there's real estate involved or just the fact that they're a local business, it can be easier for buyers to get bank financing
I
if
see.
people
I
are trying to
didn't.
fund
Yeah.
the deal. So
Okay.
there can be some appeal with those. When we talk with buyers, we always although we represent sellers, we take a consultative approach. And with buyers, we like to learn about what their background is, what their resources are, and then what they want to accomplish by having a business. Uh,
Hmm.
some buyers want a business just for to have a lifestyle business, and other buyers, they have some bigger financial goals where
Hmm.
they do need to think through what their long term goals are, so that they can buy a business that's going to help get them there. That could be the
Right.
right vehicle for that.
Right.
Uh, for some people, buying a business is definitely the right way to go in terms of versus starting one.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think finding one that matches up with what their financial interests are and then what their skills are is definitely important.
Right.
For
Right.
example, we had last year we sold a skincare e-commerce business to a
Good.
doctor in Florida who's actually a brain surgeon, and he was buying it for him and his wife, where they had an interest in different skincare products,
Oh.
and he was able to do some of the formulation type stuff for it, and things like that, where it matched up really well for what their
So
interests
that was
were.
more of a strategic buy for them.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly,
Okay.
right, yeah, fit
Okay.
their interests, so
So let's talk about financing a business a
sure.
little bit. I didn't realize, are there any banks that are more inclined to provide SBA loans, for example? Is it difficult to get an SBA loan for an online business or mobile app? What would be the
Uh,
best way?
yeah, so right now we have a couple of, kind of mortgage broker or lender broker type of people that we work with, that work with multiple banks. At least a couple of the lender broker type people now specialize in online businesses and finding funding sources
Okay.
for buying an online business. We have one in closing right now for a mobile app that is SBA backed. That's our first mobile app one that's been actually SBA backed. Other people have done
Interesting.
bank financing, but uh, yeah, I think the bank financing has really grown up a lot in the last couple
Right.
of years, and where now more and more buyers have access to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it's just been the banks getting comfortable with e-commerce. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say the e-commerce deals are definitely easier to finance if someone's looking to buy an online business. they focus on like e-commerce or Amazon businesses or software as a service type businesses.
I
Those
see.
ones, banks are familiar with those and understand the business models where
So
you can actually get funding now.
so e-commerce is really a sale of products, right? As
Yeah,
opposed to
like physical
selling
products.
knowledge
Mhm.
or selling an app
Right.
online, correct?
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
the physical
So
product.
those are getting a little bit easier to finance than the knowledge or wisdom type of online
Yes.
businesses. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think buyers too, if they do have experience in any particular industry or niche, that can stack the odds in their favor of getting bank
Okay.
financing for that, even if they've never owned a business.
Okay.
If they're buying one in a niche market where they do have experience working in that niche before,
Hmm.
that can be helpful. Um, and then part of it just comes down to finding the right deal that matches up with the SBA lender. Most of them want to see a business that has 2 or 3 years of tax returns, so
Hmm.
2 or 3 years of history, and then
Right.
there's clean financial statements,
Right.
and
Right.
where it's easy for the bank to do due diligence on it.
Right. And that's pretty much typical for any kind of business.
Yeah,
Do you get your businesses to be SBA approved in advance, or is that possible? Like
we
say
like
brick and mortar
to.
location? Okay.
Yeah, a couple of the bankers will do that, where they will
Okay.
pre-approve the deal itself for
Okay.
some particular amount. So yeah, that's a trend that I think is going to continue even more, where
Okay.
you see brokers do that.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. So, let's talk now about selling a business. Anyone who has an online business, what is your top recommendation to prep it as well as they can in order to make the transaction quick and painless and profitable?
Yeah, definitely. There's a few key things on that, and one of them is having clean, accurate financials.
Hmm.
Where we work with a lot of clients where I would call them serial entrepreneurs, where they're really good at starting stuff, really good at figuring out, how to sell into a particular market and set the business up and get it going for a couple of years, and then usually they have some way bigger idea they want to go work on, or just get kind of bored with it, where they're not the right people to manage it.
Yeah.
And usually along the way, when they're bootstrapping it, they don't necessarily keep the best financial records.
Right. Right.
However, when it comes to sell, part of it is having all the pieces in place that line up to from the buyer side, or especially like we are talking about with bank financing, if they're using
Hmm.
third-party funding sources, they really need to see clean, accurate financials where it can
Right.
dramatically impact the value of the business.
Right.
Still able to sell it, likely just might not get as much value if there's not clean and accurate financials there. Um, can't always do it as a startup entrepreneur, but ideally they even have it set up where it's its own company entity and
Okay.
all separate bank accounts and tax returns.
Right.
That's the ideal scenario.
Hmm.
But even if they run a couple of websites or businesses through the same company, at least if they have them separated out with on the financial side,
I
then
see.
that can still be useful. And then the other thing is to sell, ideally when the business is still growing, or at least when it's flat in terms of revenue. Once it starts to decline, can still get deals done, but again, there it decreases the value quite a bit. And then
Okay.
when it comes to the funding sources, they sometimes just won't even fund a business where if it's been in any kind of steady decline, because
Okay.
they kind of view it as too much of a risk.
Right. Right.
So it's not always possible to sell, while you're on a big growth curve, but ideally, at least make sure it's flat and not in decline.
So in the brick and mortar, I mean, the typical traditional businesses, I always make a big deal with my clients and students to make sure that they are not the only revenue producer, or they're not like the key element or the name that really, if they disappear, the business loses value. How do you do that online? Is there a way to
Yeah, no,
prevent
that's a
this?
great point too. That's another thing I would recommend. It's usually in the top 3 or 4 things, is where if you can set systems up in your business,
Hmm.
or at least build a small team, even if they're virtual assistants or
Right.
outsourced people, where you basically, if you think through of making the business the kind of business that anyone else could step in and run. Not entirely possible, but to, like you said, where you're not the one that's the main driving force of bringing in the revenue. Uh,
Hmm.
Largely because if you do have a business like that, someone may still buy it, but you're going to be stuck working in the business in some capacity
Right.
way longer term, versus if you have systems in place, then
Right.
you may be able to step right out of the business inside of 30 to 90 days,
Right.
versus having to stick around for a year or more to make sure that gets effectively transitioned over to a new owner.
Right.
Um,
So it's a little bit like the well, it is a lot like the other traditional businesses. But let's say, how do you, for example, if you're going to measure the value of a business, and I'm not an expert in valuation,
Mhm.
but if you're going to measure the value of a business to be able to put on the market, and let's say the owner is a revenue producer, is the main figure or the main presence in that business, which a lot of them are like that, would you deduct the cost? Would that be like a negative adjustment when you calculate the value of a business? For example, the salary or to replace that particular owner. Would that be something like you negatively adjust in the seller's discretionary earnings, for example?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because that's how buyers will view it. So
Right.
when we come at it from that angle, we always look at it of like, okay, to successfully get the deal closed, a buyer's going to look at this and go, okay, well, the owner is the key person. Yeah,
Right.
maybe they're not even paying themselves a salary; they're just
Okay.
taking distributions or the profit out of the business.
Okay.
But to keep the business going, the buyer is either going to have to do that work themselves or hire someone
Or
to put
hire
back
someone
into it.
to
Yeah,
replace them.
so the buyer will financially model it
Okay.
with that in place. So,
Okay.
factoring in, okay, well, I got to put someone in that's going to, I got to pay them
Right.
whatever, 50, $100,000 a year
Right.
to do that work and keep the business going. So,
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later about the starting of an online business and what to do at the beginning in order to eventually sell successfully.
right.
So, what about the transaction, the cost associated from the seller's perspective and also from the buyer? What are the other costs associated with the transaction of selling a business? Who pays, for example, the broker's commission? Who pays what in
Oh, yeah.
okay,
So typically on the deals that we work, we keep them pretty simple.
okay,
Where there's the fees involved, or we represent the seller typically. Once in a while, we'll represent a buyer. If we do, we make it very clear. But on the our usual deals, we're representing the seller,
okay,
and they pay our commission out of whatever the total deal value was. Uh, and
okay,
then other costs involved. Sometimes, if we use a third-party escrow service, then there'll be some form of escrow fees involved. Uh, Depends on that in terms of what that actually is. It
mm-hmm,
could range from just the cost of wire fees up to, if
mm-hmm.
a buyer or seller wants to use like escrow.com, it could be up to like 0.9% of whatever the
Oh,
money
okay.
being transacted. Uh, and then that usually split between the buyer and seller if there are escrow fees. Uh, Other stuff will be legal fees. Some of our smaller deals are pretty uncomplicated and typically are like almost all cash. So
Mhm.
keeps it simple on the legal agreement side of things. But we always recommend our seller clients have an attorney involved just to make sure any contractual stuff fits for
Oh,
them
okay.
over their overall business and personal interests. Uh,
Right.
but we usually keep the deals pretty simple in that regard. So potentially attorneys fees, escrow fees, and then our commission.
Mhm.
And then once in a while there might be some fees involved if do you have a bunch of inventory type of stuff that might need to get moved from one warehouse to another.
Mhm.
Uh,
Okay.
Other than that, it's
Well, we
usually
don't
all
think
fees
about
involved.
this, but yeah,
Mhm.
right. So that might have it. So there's also CPAs, I imagine. I mean, I imagine someone who wants to sell or buy a business may want to hire an accountant to, you know, cross through the financials and make sure that everything is clear and
Yeah,
that
if they don't already have one, definitely would recommend that. Yeah, if they want to sell for maximum value,
Well,
definitely would have.
like for example, a
Yeah.
buyer. I have a client, for example, who's been looking for a business for years now. It seems like, but every time there is a bunch of financials to review, and if you're not an expert in accounting, it would make sense to hire
Yes.
someone. Correct?
Definitely, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. From a buyer side,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
definitely
From the
want to
buyers.
have an accountant representing you when it comes to once it, maybe not initially right out of the gates, but once they find a business they want to acquire, then they
Right.
definitely would want an accountant to help them on due diligence. Just because
Okay.
even if a seller is 100% honest, they are typically entrepreneurs who, they're not, CFOs.
Right.
They're not looking at their financials every day like a actual accountant would. So if nothing else, it helps make sure that the buyer is clear on what all the costs are. Certainly they don't want to make sure that it's accurate and
Right.
represented like it was supposed to be. But
Right.
even if it is, they still want to make sure that it's when it comes to them and how they're going to run the business, make
Hmm.
sure they have accurate numbers so they can financially model what it's going to look
Right.
like in the future.
So, I have a question about multipliers. When it comes to valuing an online business as opposed to a brick and mortar location, I've noticed on your website you have a bunch of businesses for sales that are listed, and the gross sales, the ratio between gross sales and valuation is huge. It's
Right.
and profit. It compared to, for example, a brick and mortar location like a restaurant, they'll be lucky if their net profit is 20%, right? In this case, it looks like 5 times, 6 times
Right.
more the gross profit. Is that typical of online businesses, or?
Yeah, I'd say the multiple is usually lower than that on online businesses. We do have some
Oh, they are
multiples where
lower.
we'll,
Okay.
yeah, it depends on the type of business. And then
Okay.
once in a while, we'll have some listings we'll take on where it's a past client or one where we may experiment on the valuation side to see where we can push the market or where we're
Okay.
looking more for a strategic buyer. Um, like we have an app one right now and then another app one coming where the seller is really looking for a strategic buyer that wants to sees value in the user base compared to the
Mhm.
revenue.
I
uh,
see.
we don't do a lot of those, but if we think we can find the right buyer for it, we may take them on. But for our typical listings, how that usually goes is the mobile app listings usually tend to sell for somewhere between 1.5 and 3 times whatever the yearly profit is.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so can call it EBITDA or seller's discretionary earnings,
Right,
but
right, right.
something that represents what the business is actually generating for free cash flow.
So
Uh,
it's not as great of multiplier as I thought it was then.
Yeah, internet businesses like the e-commerce ones, those we see more 2 to 3.5 times what the
Okay.
yearly
Okay.
EBITDA number is. Software as a service businesses definitely get the highest multiples. Those can be more like 4 to 6 times.
Oh, really?
But
Okay.
yeah, anything with subscription revenue tends to
Uh-huh.
get higher valuation. So
Subscriptions are good.
yeah,
Memberships and things like that are
yep,
good to have.
definitely, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So, I also noticed that you offer something that I haven't seen before, a consultation to determine the upside potential of and growth potential of the business, and you do this at no cost to the seller, is that?
We have been historically. Moving forward, we'll at least do we're still gonna offer initial consultation for free, and then
Uh-huh.
we do have another person we're gonna be partnering with where some select deals we may actually work with sellers on a formal client basis to help
Okay.
them improve the value of their business a little longer term, uh,
Okay.
where people do want to look at it as a long term play and really maximize the value. Um, but even for someone who's just going to list their business right now, we will go through and advise them on a few simple things that they can probably do, stuff that can
Okay.
be done in 30 days or less type of stuff. So,
But I'm looking at the pro forma financials that you provide, and you said that the buyers really enjoy the pro forma financial. Isn't that a little bit risky to, provide that kind of information because it could be, very highly subjective, I suppose.
Y- yes, yeah, I would say for a lot of them it is still subjective. So we like to at least get sellers thinking of, okay, if they were going to keep the business, what would they do
Uh-huh.
to grow it, and what might
Okay.
the numbers look like if they were to do that.
Okay.
Buyer's not going to buy it based on that for sure.
No, no, no,
Yeah,
of
but
course.
we like it because it helps paint a picture for buyers of like, hey, here's some. It usually generates some ideas for some low hanging fruit that either
Right.
the current owner or new owner can come in and do.
Right.
So that's one
And
of
it
the.
also shows them how much equity they still have room to build into that business. Because when you buy a business that's for sale, you're buying the equity, which means if the business is optimized, you may not have as much equity or room for equity to build over time, right?
Yes,
So,
yeah,
but
great
then
point.
if you show them the pro forma, it may not change the valuation of the business, but it may be some sort of, you know, um, added value to the
Yes.
business itself.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It might help get the deal done, but it's not gonna directly impact the
Interesting.
valuation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So now a lot of my clients are thinking of starting a brand new business. They don't know if it's going to be brick and mortar or online. But let's say they decide to choose to start an independent online business from their brilliant idea. And my experience is that very, very few entrepreneurs, first-time entrepreneurs especially, maybe not the serial, but think about how much they want to sell their business in a few years because they don't even think they're going to sell it, right? They're
Right.
so so engrossed in building a brand new business, so excited about, creating this beautiful thing, that they don't think of if and when they will exit the business, which is, it's not if, it's when they will
Right.
exit the business. Now, if let's say I'm starting a business, online business, and I want to sell it in X amount of years, maybe 5, maybe 10, for $5 million. What should be a target in terms of the net profit, a business like that, online business, should be targeting in order to sell it for $5 million, for example?
Sure. No, yeah, and that's a great way to think of it too. Like if people can come into it with the mindset of, hey, I am going to sell this business someday or exit, even if it ends up being them transitioning the business to a new owner. Like you said,
Right,
either way, at some point they're going to either exit it or shut it down.
right,
That's an exit also.
right.
So yeah, so if they think through it ahead of time, I always find from talking to our seller clients, like once they did go into it with the mindset of selling it, they were able to approach
Mhm.
their business almost more as like not just owner, but also almost like an investor, where they're
Right.
looking of ways they could increase the asset value of the business
Mhm.
and put assets in place and think of it that way. Where yeah, if nothing else, it can help get them through some of the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, where things do go wrong, things do go bad sometimes. Where uh, if you have the mindset of you building this asset for a long-term play, long-term
Mhm.
exit, can help pull you through some of the times when it's like
Right.
you
Yeah, you
question
do need
yourself as
you
an
do need that
entrepreneur.
fuel sometimes when things
Yeah,
go, not as great as you anticipate. You need to have that
right.
big picture thinking of, okay, I'm doing this for that reason.
And especially if you have some number target in mind, then you
Right.
can definitely invest in the right things along the way. Like if someone was going to, let's say, wanted to go sell their business for $5 million on the
Mhm.
number side, yeah, I would recommend they get it doing at least $1 million a year in profit.
Okay.
Ideally, more in the ballpark of like, probably 1.3 to 1.5.
Mhm.
Just at those numbers too, there'll definitely be larger buyers that will
Mhm.
be interested in it. Like once you get up $1 million a year in profit, definitely can
Okay.
impact the valuation also.
Right.
But if they're trending to that range of 1.3 to 1.5 and growing, that definitely will stack the odds in their favor for sure.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and at that point, they'll likely have some team in place. I mean,
Right.
out of functionality to get to those kind of numbers, you probably will.
Right.
Uh, and then they probably will have built up, a really good customer base. So
Do you have an idea of what kind of numbers of terms of customer base? Are we talking tens of thousands or
doesn't, yeah, not
fifty?
even necessarily doesn't, that doesn't matter. The one thing we'll see buyers look at is if, say, they started like a B2B business where they're selling to
Mhm.
businesses, they look more at customer concentration,
Okay.
where if any one customer accounts for more than like 10 to 20% of the overall revenue, uh, then that would be the bigger thing, is making sure that no one customer is making up, like almost all your revenue. That's
Right, right. Otherwise, you expose yourself to losing a customer and
right.
100% of your business with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It makes it more risky for sure.
So get those numbers. If you want $5 million equity, build it to $1 million in net profit per year, approximately. So 1 to 5, I suppose, and
Yeah.
make sure that you are not the only sole, or the business doesn't only depend on you, and you have a team and system built
Yeah.
in place in your business to make sure that, it's not, you're not the bottleneck or the key provider of the services.
Yeah.
Um, and any other recommendation for brand new startups?
Yeah, I think one thing that people don't think of going into it is that they don't look for ways to make their business what buyers would call defensible,
Okay.
where they're not as prone to seeing other competitors coming into the market.
Right.
Like, for example, if you're starting an online business where you're just sourcing products off of Alibaba and
I
drop
see.
shipping products, where anyone can go on there and find the same exact products,
I
that provide
see.
the same exact value. Uh, so you want to look for ways you can either make the products themselves defensible or
Mhm.
create a brand
Right.
where people do like buying from that brand for whatever
Okay.
reason, where it appeals to them.
Okay.
Uh, and then if you can, with your business model, build in any kind of subscription revenue, that will always increase the value. So
Well, that's
anytime we
good to
put out,
point. That is
yeah,
very good to know. That's
we if you put out as a broker, if we put out listings that have any kind of subscription or recurring revenue, even if the business isn't generating a ton of profit, buyers are still interested in it because
Okay.
they want that. So,
That's
yeah.
great to know. I have a question about brands, personal brands. You see a lot of online businesses and there's a person, who is the main figure, as opposed to having the business itself. I'm debating with that myself.
Right.
Is it open for business or is it Patricia Bottero Saint Jean? What are the pros and cons of each one?
Yeah, I think the pros are there's definitely some great ways to it's a great way to start a business because you can put yourself out there and you can market yourself and your expertise,
Hmm.
and it's a great way to generate potentially fast cash because people
Hmm.
can go and create a consulting business or a more information product business.
Hmm.
It's lower risk in the sense of, you don't necessarily, you can do that in ways where sometimes you can go create a product before, or you can almost go sell the product before you even launch it, at
Right,
least, versus an offline product. The physical product's tough to do that with.
right, right.
Uh, so there's definitely advantages to it. And it can be a great way to get started for sure.
Hmm.
The downsides are when you go to sell it, you're looking at either a longer term transition where you have to transition it over to a new owner
I see.
wants to step into that kind of business.
Okay.
There's definitely going to be fewer buyers, just in the sense of, uh, if you're like a consultant for accountants or something like that,
Hmm.
you're going to need someone, a buyer who wants to be in that particular market.
Right, right,
Um, we have seen some people that started off, like I have a friend with a information product business that was built on his partner's expertise, which was as a like a private pilot where they provide education for private pilots where they have to stay up and on training and certification stuff. So
right.
they started out where just the two of them. Now over time they built it out where they have a whole team of people that create products and content.
I
So
see.
now they're in a position where they can go sell it because it's not reliant upon them as the owners. There's
Right.
other people in place that create the content for the business, and where they're almost more of a publishing model as opposed to one expert base for the business. So,
But is the name of the business their name or is it a different company
no,
name?
it's different than their name. Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah.
right. Okay, interesting. So, is there anything other recommendation you have in terms of buying or selling or starting a brand new business online?
Uh,
Any projections of the market? It looks like it's a sector of industry that's still growing, and
yeah, Yeah, I would say it's going to continue to grow from everything that we see for online businesses. I think it probably will continue to get more competitive where,
hmm,
there'll be more and more smart people, coming into the market. That's just the trend probably I've seen with internet marketing in
right,
general, where, in the early days back, 97 to 2002, you could probably go sell, almost any ebook in any particular niche if you just had decent marketing,
right.
uh, and get search engine rankings really easily. So, all this stuff when it comes to marketing and generating traffic is probably going to continue to get more competitive. So, um, but in the same sense, there's going to be more buyers for businesses where
Hmm.
if you have something up and going and established, that gives you value because someone can come in and buy your business versus starting from scratch and,
Right, right.
and taking on that risk.
Yeah, it takes a different mindset, between a brand new startup and acquiring a business. The acquisition is more like an entrepreneur, but also an investor. So in terms of
Yes.
and then the pure startup from a brand new idea is more creative, more urgent. The investor is a little bit more, you know, um, um, you know, better at evaluating the value, long terms in terms of the business ownership
Yeah,
before getting
definitely.
it.
Yeah, I would say in terms of trends, they continue. For anyone starting a business, would definitely be, like I said, on the accurate financials and records. The
Okay.
bank financing part is just going to continue to go that way. So it'd be more and more important. I think buyers are going to continue to get more and more educated too. Where if you do have a business, you start now, you might want to sell in 3 years. If you're
Mhm.
the business owner that does have clean, accurate financials and tax records, and you've set it up where there's systems in your business and you have some subscription revenue kind of stuff, you'll just set your business far apart from anyone else. Where
Great.
buyers will look at yours and go, "Oh yeah, that's the kind of business I would like to buy,"
Right.
and they'll be able to fund it with third-party financing,
Right.
and so it increase the number of offers you get and the value that you get for it.
And memberships. So membership
Yeah.
are helpful. Also, what about affiliate marketing? Having a good set of affiliates that you work with on a regular basis. Does it influence the value of a business at all?
Oh, we haven't really seen that.
Okay,
But I think if you can build that, it is almost like having a team of the traditional business buyers would almost view it as like you have, like a wholesale distribution network. So
okay,
it is good in terms of marketing. I think of
okay,
having it's like any extra marketing systems you can have in place where
right,
if it is affiliates, that's great.
okay,
It definitely can
wonderful,
add value, and it's more of the like I said, having any kind of repeatable marketing systems.
right,
If
right,
affiliates are part of that, it can work out great.
true. Okay, wow, thank you so much. That was a wealth of information, and I know a lot of people who are either buying or selling or starting a brand new online businesses don't often think of all these elements of how to make a successful transaction at some point, because we may not think about it, but we will exit our business whether it's we want to or not. So might as well just build equity and transition it as well as possible. Do if anybody has any questions or they want to sell the business or buy a business online, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh yeah, definitely. They can just visit us at appbusinessbrokers.com, or if you give them a link anywhere in here, definitely
I will.
go through
I
that
will do
link.
that.
Tell us they came from you. We'll give them some extra VIP
Great.
special treatment. So
Great. Thank you so much.
thank you for
Thank you,
having me.
Eric. I really appreciate your time and the gold nuggets that you've given us today for us, online business, digital business marketers. So really appreciate. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed this wealth of content that Eric shared with us today. So, to sum it up, to successfully start and eventually sell your online business, consider the following: create systems and build a team so that you can be easily replaceable once a buyer acquires your business. It will also keep the valuation of your business higher. Give yourself a number of how much you want to sell your business someday and work towards that number as you build it. That will also help you make better and more strategic decisions over time and help you overcome the challenges that you will meet along the way. Sell your business while the revenues keep growing or at least plateau. It will also be easier for the buyer to finance or find financing for your particular business. Create a source of recurring revenues like membership sites and affiliates. Apparently, those are very well regarded by the buyer community and the financial community. Consider the brand identity of your business. Perhaps at the beginning, it's easier to build a business with your name and build some, an identity based on you for now. But eventually, a company name might make it easier to transfer ownership to a new buyer. Work with a broker who specializes in your business type. If you have a restaurant, interview brokers who specialize in selling restaurants. The same with an online business. It's a different type of business, it's unique. And a broker that only sells online businesses or mobile apps and e-commerce will be able to better package your business for a greater asking price and also attract a domestic and an international clientele as well as strategic buyers. For more information on buying or selling an online business, go visit Eric's company, appbusinessbrokers.com. That's appbusinessbrokers.com. And of course, for extra love and red carpet, it won't hurt if you let him know that you found him via Open for Business. Speaking of which, if you're considering starting a business, join our community at Open for Business. We are your business ownership's research lab where our courses, our coaching sessions, and the market resources that we share teach you how to research, find, and start the right business for you. Whether it's an independent startup from your brilliant idea or the development of a turnkey concept such as a franchise or business opportunity, or the acquisition of a business that is for sale. Thank you for watching, and cheers to building a life we love. Take care.